Thanks for joining. We are at the top of the hour. We will give it a few more minutes to allow others to join. Thank you. Hello, everyone, and welcome to our first Diversity and Inclusion webinar hosted by Alight's Campus Recruitment Team. I am Cara Atkins, University Relations Campus Recruitment Manager here at Alight. And being a person of color, I am super excited to participate and learn in today's webinar. We have a very insightful session in this next hour where leaders and alumni will share what diversity and inclusion looks like at Alight and also talk about navigating the interview process as a person of color. I know it must be challenging having to finish out your spring semester in a virtual setting, requiring a huge adjustment on your part. Even more so, it may be frustrating not being able to participate in so many of the activities that go along with spring semester and graduation. So we are truly grateful that you have taken the time to join us for this informative webinar today. We have a very impressive turnout, over 200 students signed up, and additionally, we have over 30 internal team members on the call. Before we get started, I wanted to take a moment to introduce our two event leads, Angela Gray, campus recruiter and creator of this webinar, and Princiana Price, Workday campus recruitment and training lead, and also event co-lead. A lot of planning went into this awesome event, and so I wanted to publicly thank them both for all of their hard work and dedication to ensure today is successful. So without further delay, I will turn it over to Angela, who will start the webinar. Angela?
Thank you, Cara. And hi, everyone. We are so grateful you joined us today. During today's event, we will share information about Alight Solutions and our services. You'll meet our Diversity and Inclusion co-lead, Zian Daniels, who will shed light on our current D&I practices and initiatives. She'll provide tips on navigating the interview process as a person of color and introduce you to our Q&A panelists, which consist of alumni from North Carolina A&T State University, as well as Texas Southern University, and members of our legal department, recruiting team, and D&I committee. Please feel free to pose your questions in the chat throughout the presentation, and we'll get to as many as possible during that section. And at the end of the presentation today, Princiana will close us out. So, for those of you that may not be familiar with Alight Solutions, let me tell you a little bit about us. We are a market leader in integrated benefits, payroll, and cloud solutions. We bring our solutions together for our clients to help them get the most out of their human capital strategies and create a seamless experience for our clients' people to help them make the best health, wealth, and career decisions for themselves and their families. Colleagues in our consumer experience solutions area, they make it easier for people to engage and interact with human resources by providing people-friendly technology. Colleagues in our health and wealth business area administer solutions to help clients manage costs, compliance, and risk by providing their people with the tools they need to navigate their health and financial options. And our payroll and cloud colleagues provide flexible and experience-based solutions that make the cloud work harder for HR and finance, from focused support to end-to-end services. We service over 3,000 clients of all sizes, and we hire approximately 300 full-time hires annually and 50 plus interns every year. I'm now going to turn it over to our guest speaker, Zan. Thank you so very much for being here.
The sound check. Can everyone hear me okay?
Yes, ma'am.
So thank you so much, Angela, for that introduction. I am so honored to be a part of the discussion today. As Angela mentioned, my name is Zan Daniels, and I actually have a dual impact role here at Alight. I serve as the testing leader in our cloud payroll professional services organization, and I'm also privileged to serve as one of Alight's Inclusion Council co-leaders. So why is diversity and inclusion important at Alight? For us, diversity is about the numbers and inclusion is about making the numbers count. And in order for us to make the numbers count, inclusion has to be a part of our DNA. And our DNA is made up of our workforce, that's the people we work with, our workplace, the environment that we work in, and our community, the people that we serve. So since diversity and inclusion is embedded in our DNA, we try to embed it in everything that we do. And so you'll see that in our training and educational opportunities, in our recruitment efforts, and in our HR policies and benefits. But one of the really unique things about us at Alight is that we see inclusion as being everyone's responsibility. So we want to have 18,000 chief inclusion officers. It's not just one person who's sitting at the top and saying, okay, everybody go play nice. For us, it has to be a part of everything that we do. And so we accomplish this through our diversity inclusion teams across our different locations and offices. And it's the responsibility of these teams, and these teams are made up of senior executives, of managers, of frontline employees, and of colleagues who do the day-to-day work every day. And it's their responsibility as a team. We kind of spread the inclusion joy. So we're responsible for creating cultural awareness and creating education and learning opportunities for colleagues. But most importantly, it's our job as the D&I teams to create a place where everybody feels like they can be their authentic selves and belong. And so one of the ways that we do that is through our Heritage Month celebrations. So several times throughout the year, we highlight a different heritages that represent the colleagues here at Alight. And so in as much as we all like a party, our parties have a purpose, and that purpose is to create cultural awareness, build educational opportunities, and really create an opportunity where colleagues across the globe have an opportunity to network from others and learn from others as well. So let's go on to the next slide. So what we want to highlight here is we like to celebrate our Heritage Months and spend a great deal of time around building cultural awareness. And the pictures here just denote a few of the Heritage Month events that we've celebrated in the past. I specifically want to highlight not just because I'm included in the photo, but because of the importance of the conversation that we had in one of our Heritage Months. Up on the top left, you'll see for Black History Month last year, we had the honor of hosting Frank McCain Jr. And if you're not familiar with the name Frank McCain was one of the ANT4 and civil rights leader who's credited with kind of sparking the civil rights movement. And when we hosted Frank McCain Jr. in our Charlotte office, he came to our office, and not just for the Black colleagues in the office, but for all colleagues in the office, and talked about the importance of recognizing that the civil rights movement was not a moment. It was was not an era, I should say. It was a moment in time. And we need to continue to move forward those moments in time in a very, very targeted way as we experience some of the same transgressions that were experienced back then. Also highlighting Hispanic Heritage Month, People Matter. And one other thing I want to share about our Heritage Month. So it's not just about celebrating our heritage. We also take this as an opportunity to kind of give back to our communities. So Angela, let's move on to the next slide. We have talked about diversity and inclusion and why it's important to us at Alight. I want to spend a little bit of time talking about navigating the interview process as a person of color. So one of the best sort of points of advice that I received as a college student and was as I was preparing to interview for my first job was that it's not only important for the company to interview me, but it was also important for me to recognize and to understand that it was important for me to also take the time to interview that organization. And so as a person of color, there's certain things that I want you to think about in addition to kind of the traditional things that you'll think about when you're preparing for interviews. There are a couple of other things that I wanted to just kind of talk with you and share. So first is this notion of cultural fit versus cultural addition. So when we think about being a cultural fit for an organization, it really is whether or not your views and the way that your work style, as an example, does it align to that organization's views and the values that that organization represents. So when you get asked questions like, tell me how you like to be managed, or tell me how you handle conflict, those are all questions that are meant for the interviewer to understand whether or not you're a cultural fit. So make no mistake about it, being a cultural fit can be a deal breaker when it comes to getting the job. So you want to make sure that you understand what that organization culture is like. But I would challenge you to also think about whether or not you can be a cultural addition. And so cultural add is about, is that environment or is that organization a place where you can bring your authentic self and kind of bring your own spice and flavor and add that to the cultural pot? Can you bring your experience as a student at an HBCU to that organization and that experience be valued and respected? Is that organization a place where you truly feel like you can be your authentic self and belong? So how will you know that? Like, how do you know if you can be a cultural add? So the first thing I would ask you to do is to start by really trying to understand what the organization's cultural values are. How do they make those core values real every day? So I would actually ask my interviewer, not just what are the organization's cultural values, because they're probably going to include that in their marketing material and the material that they send you, but ask your interviewer, how do they make those cultural values come to life every day? How do they embody those cultural values? At Alight, our cultural values are people matter, excellence every day, think forward, and act now. So you notice that we lead with people forward, meaning that our people matter. And that's because our people come first, above everything else. So we believe that, good ideas come from everywhere, and that we need to have an environment where people can feel valued and respected. And we're mindful of that every day. And so what does that mean for me as a manager? That means that I'm empowered to make decisions that protect my people. I'm empowered to say to a client who may have an unreasonable request, like, can we work on Thanksgiving? To say, no, this is a time for our colleagues to spend time with their families, and we won't be able to do that. Not to say that clients ever ask us to work on Thanksgiving. But I'm also empowered to do things like this, and that is to reach out to our people in our community and to have conversations with them about diversity and inclusion and what it means to us at Alight. So now that you have an understanding about cultural fit, let's talk about this notion of cultural add. And so as you're interviewing the company, I would encourage you to be bold and to ask questions about how the company embraces diversity and inclusion. Inquire about their employee resource groups and the way that they engage employees. How do they take college students, particularly college students of color, and help them transition into the workplace? Those questions will help you better understand if you can be a cultural add, not just a cultural fit. And last, but probably first, is know your brand. So you are the CEO of You Incorporated. And as the CEO of You Incorporated, you should be able to articulate what value you, the brand, can bring to an organization. What unique skill sets do you have? What are your core values? And once you know and understand that, always lead with that. If you recall, my introduction was an example of how I market my brand. I am a dual impact employee. I can impact the business explicitly through the work that I do as a test leader, as well as implicitly in the work that I do as an inclusion leader. And that's my story. So, this weekend, if you hadn't had a chance to see it, I would encourage you to do so. But I actually watched Michelle Obama's Becoming on Netflix. And she said something with me that really resonated with me as I was thinking about preparing for this webinar specifically. And in one of the segments, she's actually talking to a group of students, and she says to them, you don't want to be a statistic. You want to be a story. Stories have impact. Stories make a difference. So share your story with your brand. And once you've defined your brand, you need to market your brand like it's your full-time job. Market and respect your brand. What does your LinkedIn profile say about you, your brand? What does your social media say about you, your brand? How do you prepare for the interview in a way that not only respects your brand, but reflects your brand? How do you present yourself in a video conference or in a video interview session? Those are all the things that you need to consider when you are thinking about your brand. So you may be sitting here thinking, okay, so I'm in school right now, or I'm trying to wrap up in this, new and crazy world. I'm not really sure what my brand is or how to articulate it. So right now, I just want you to do one thing. Think of a word that people might use to describe you, or one that you might use to describe yourself. So let's say that word is dependable. So that's really a part of your brand. And when you introduce yourself, when you lead into conversations and interviews about your brand, start with that. It might sound something like, my name is Zan Daniels, and one of the things I really value about myself, and one of the things I feel like I can contribute to your organization, is that I'm very dependable. You can rely on me to get the job done. So just to kind of wrap this up in terms of just navigating the interview process as a person of color, there are a couple things that I just want to leave with you. Number one, remember, it's your job to interview the company just as much as it's the recruiter's job to interview you. Think about whether or not you can be a cultural fit, or how you'll be a cultural fit, as well as can you be a cultural add? Can you bring your unique self to the organization? Understand the company's core values, because that's important to being a cultural fit. But from a cultural add perspective, be bold and ask questions about diversity and inclusion. Challenge the company to make you feel like you are going to be valued when you arrive. And lastly, know your brand. If you don't create your own brand, or if you don't know your brand, someone else will create it for you. And I guarantee that it's not going to reflect who you really are as a person. So take the time to do that. All right, with that, I'd like to move on to the Q&A session and to talk to our panelists about their experiences. So first, let me introduce the panelists. And so starting with Kayla Wilson, who is an integrations testing analyst and North Carolina A&T alumna. Jarvis Coley is a solution architect in our business and a Texas Southern University alum. Gloria Goodwin is an HR senior specialist in our talent acquisitions team. Paulette Dotson is our EVP and general counsel. Tola Sabatin is our chief privacy officer, and Thomas Blair is the Charlotte location leader in our human capital management business. So let's start with the first two questions. Let's start with Kayla and with Jarvis. So Kayla and Jarvis, please introduce yourself, how long you've been with Alight and your school major. Tell us a little bit about while you were in college, how did you prepare for the interview process and entering the workforce? And what school resources did you use to kind of aid you in this process? And then lastly, what advice would you give other students to help prepare them for the interview process? And so why don't we start with Kayla first? So Kayla?
Hi, everyone. Good afternoon or good day. My name is Kayla Wilson. I am a alumna of North Carolina A&T State University. I was in the School of Business. I've been with Alight for over a year now. So just recently just celebrated my 1-year anniversary with the company. While in college, some of the things that helped me prepare for the graduation and then working to the workforce. One thing that helped me was utilizing the resources that my school offered. So as a business student, I would participate in many activities such as creating like resumes, elevator pitches, and just like general information, like research the company and stuff. What resources? One of the resources that helped me transition from college to the workforce was an organization that my friends and I started called Bombshells in Business. So it was a group at A&T where we would help. It was mainly targeted towards young women, but we did have a few males in the organization. So we just helped them like just ease the bridge between a college life and a work life a little bit easier for them. And then some advice I have for the interview process. One thing I can say is always make sure to research your company and to see where your life goals fit within that within the goals of the company, and to always like ask a question about diversity and just say like, what are some like opportunities that a company such as Alight has to cater for yourself or your peers?
All righty. Thanks, Kayla. Good morning, everyone. I hope you guys are as excited as I am to kind of be here and spend a little time with you and hopefully impart some wisdom and knowledge to help you guys move forward in your professional careers. Again, my name is Jarvis Coley. I'm alumni of Texas Southern University, the Jesse H. Jones School of Business. I am also a proud member of Kappa Alpha Psi Fraternity Incorporated, Spring 93 Initiate. Go Noobs. And I think for me, I'll just kind of set the stage a little bit. I've kind of had two careers. I spent the first 14 years of my career working for MD Anderson Cancer Center, and I've had almost the last 16 here working for Alight Solutions. Two companies. I've done a lot of things in both, and I've had great opportunities and learning experiences in both. I think for me, coming out of school, I was already working for MD Anderson at the time, and my mentor, my then boss, kind of saw some things in me that he really felt would be good moving into the managerial front. for MD Anderson. So he kind of, harnessed those skills, kind of mentored me and groomed and prepped me for my career there as I moved along the corporate ladder for MD Anderson. So I think for me, the biggest thing there is I really was unaware of kind of how to tap into and utilize these resources that probably were available, but I did have something that was a good work ethic and just the demeanor about me that somebody wanted to shoulder tap and invest their time and commitment in me to ensure that I had resources to begin my professional career. So if there's anything that I can tell you and impart any knowledge and wisdom on you, it's just understanding the resources that you have available. Do not be shy to utilize those resources. Seek out mentorship, seek out help, and go to things like this. Go to forums, in your major, at your school, fraternity, sorority initiatives that you can just be able to just meet people, to socialize, and just use all resources at your disposal. So I think it's a great opportunity, a great forum for you guys to just get to know, to ask the questions that you may not be as comfortable asking in person, but that's why we're here to really help you guys. So again, thank you for your time. I'm excited to spend some time talking to you.
So let's move on to recruiting with Gloria Goodwin. So Gloria, can you offer any tips on how to market yourself professionally and navigate the interview process as a person of color? How should students approach asking about the D&I aspects of a company during the interview process?
Well, good morning. First of all, let me say that I live in Houston, so I have to give a shout out to TSU, to the Tigers, and also to Prairie View, to the Panthers, first of all. So welcome to the call. Let's take a minute. Let's talk about some tips. I always say it starts really with the resume. Take a few minutes, spend the extra time, really tailor the resume to the job that you're applying for. I know it's a little extra work. You're probably saying, oh no, not every job I'm applying for, but I can tell you that extra effort really is going to pay off. To the female candidates on the call, I can tell you that you need to be bold. You want to really be bold about this. So they have had studies that show that a female candidate can have 8 of the 10 requirements of a position. She will not apply because she doesn't have all 10. Where a male candidate can have 3 of the 10 and he will apply. So I would say be bold, apply to the role. And also you want to understand the process, understand what you're getting into. Understand, is it a phone interview? Is it going to be a video interview? Is it going to be in person? And it's also important to spend what I call a little bit of mirror time. Stand in the mirror, practice some questions, see if you get really nervous or see if you start sweating, and just see how you can improve your interaction during the course of that interview. So I think it's really important to understand the process and get some feedback. To the D&I point, I'm really surprised that during the course of interviews, I don't get more questions around D&I. Every now and then you might get a question about it, but for the most part you don't. And it's important, especially I think for minority and female candidates, if you want to ask a question, ask it. It starts there. I think all of my colleagues can attest to the fact that I'm a person that will ask a question. If I want to know something, I'll ask a question. And so it really does make you stand out during that interview process because one, you will appear to be very engaged, and that's also important as you go through this process. But it's important to talk about the subjects that matter to you. And if D&I is important to you, you need to bring it up in the call. You need to ask, hey, these values that you talk about, how does it impact the recruiting process? What happens in that process that really comes from your D&I values? And people like me will be glad to share with you that here at Alight, we make sure that we're presenting a slate of diverse candidates to our hiring managers. And we're also ensuring that on the other side of that, that the interview teams have diversity as well. I know last year our manager asked us to ensure that these teams are diverse. And so we go back to our hiring managers to ensure that they have a diverse slate of interviewers to interview candidates. So I truly believe when the playing field is level, hey, then it's up to you. So just a few tips.
Next, let's move on and to ask some questions of Thomas, Tola, and Paulette. Thomas, Tola, and Paulette, as diverse representatives from different lines of business in Alight, in what capacity does your role and responsibility drive and promote D&I at Alight? What do you think is the most challenging aspect of achieving a truly diverse and inclusive workplace environment? And in your opinion, what does it mean to be a person of color and to bring your authentic self to work every day? And how do you personally do that? So let's first start off with Paulette Godson, EVP and General Counsel.
Hi, everybody. First, I want to really thank you for tuning in today, for listening, and for most importantly, participating. Stay safe and stay well. So in my role as a leader, I sit on the senior leadership team of Alight, and I feel a huge responsibility for bringing diversity to every part of my practice, every part of my interaction with my colleagues. And that means from the top all the way to the bottom of the spectrum and across. So I bring my own personal, I loved Gloria's focus on personal brand and Zan's focus on brand and what makes us individual and unique. I'm not just a Black woman, I'm an immigrant. I live in the Midwest. All of those things allow me and give me a privilege of having a unique perspective. I think, so as I think about that, I really push myself. It's not always comfortable to bring that complete rainbow of yourself to every circumstance, but I do. Even in, what I do, I also practice law in addition to being a leader. And so, I try to bring all of that to every aspect of my work. Zan, I hope that answers your question. Thank you.
Let's move on to Tola.
Sure.
Tola?
Hi, everyone. For me, as the Chief Privacy Officer at Alight, I am constantly interacting with different teams across the company in different locations across the globe and working with those teams on initiatives to increase global data privacy controls across Alight. And it's really important in that role, at least my opinion, to promote diversity and inclusion within Alight, to create an environment that encourages people to speak up, to share ideas, to encourage feedback from folks, and also help them in receiving feedback, both positive and negative, and working through those feedback. It's really important in what I do, and really encouraging collaboration between teams to make sure that every voice is respected, is welcomed, and is heard, so you don't feel ignored, that I'm new to the company, no one's going to listen to me, I'm a minority, no one cares. Everybody matters, and this is not just something that's unique with me as a manager, but it's part of Alight's core values, as you've heard on this call. People matter, and we try to make sure that every voice is heard. In terms of the challenge that I see in truly creating a true, diverse, and inclusive environment, in my opinion, is communication. And communication is a two-way street, right? So it's not just you as the sender, but also the receiver. Each person having a good understanding and appreciation for the diversity that the other person in the receiving end, right, of the communication has. So even if you're talking to your person of color, talking to another person of color, just understanding that they also have other diversity differences that are unique to what you have. They have different backgrounds, different experiences, and accepting that and respecting that when you're communicating, and being very mindful of things that you would say and slangs that we use that might just be simple saying, what's happening, what's up, that's really a slang, but understanding that the other person might read that differently because they have a different experience and background. And when you're communicating with them, using more plain words like, how are you doing, how is it going, something more universal and simple. And again, that communication aspect is really essential to creating a true diverse and inclusive environment. I think the last question that you asked was about how you bring your authentic self. For me, it's just being real. Again, as I'm creating this environment of a safe culture, open door policy, being open, being real, be respectful of other people, and not jumping into conclusions and assumptions quickly if someone says something wrong. Just again, being respectful in how I try to correct people if they say the wrong thing, and have them understand why I'm reacting a little bit differently, why my background is different, but giving them that feedback in a positive way that encourages them, as opposed to making them feel, that they have to put up a defense. Again, just encouraging encouragement and the communication and that open environment to really know that you're respected for the diversity you bring to the team. Okay.
It's so important. Absolutely. And I love your comment about be real. All right, let's move on to Thomas. Last but not least, Thomas Blair, Charlotte Location Leader for Human Capital Management Practice.
Hey guys, hopefully everyone can hear me. The camera is taking a while to log on. So I want to say thank everybody for being able to join us today for this webinar, and I'm just hoping that everyone's able to take away some very beneficial information, different nuggets of knowledge that not only can you guys use in the workforce, but I think when we have settings and panels like this, you guys are taking away good portions of knowledge that you can use in everyday life. And so I'll get to the questions that were asked. I think one of the questions that we had were, what are some of the biggest challenges that we have around making a work environment diverse and inclusive? And so I want to spend some time to talk about that one. And hopefully in my answer, I plan to answer the question, but at the same time, I still want to make sure I give good sound advice to the audience that they can take with them. And so one of the things I'll say that I feel is one of the most challenging aspects of achieving a truly diverse and inclusive workplace environment is, to be honest, I think from a leadership standpoint, especially for me being a location leader for Charlotte, is that I often have to be humble enough to be able to acknowledge that when it comes to diversity and inclusion, I mean, I don't know everything. And as leaders, like, we have to be humble to sit back and tell ourselves and acknowledge that we do not know everything when it comes to being diverse and when it comes to being inclusive. And we have to be able to accept that. And so when we really want to focus on a diverse and inclusive workplace, we have to go into work every single day knowing that, like, my goal is to continue to learn about different cultures, continue to learn about different backgrounds, continue to learn about different geographies. And the more that I force myself to learn every day, that gives me knowledge when I sit back and thinking about the core values and the different cultures that I want to put in my workplace and my environment. And so I say that, like, step number one is just being humble, is because we just have to be extremely realistic that we don't know everything about everything that's going on in the world. We don't know everything about every holiday. We don't know everything about every religion, belief, background. The answer is, like, we just don't know it. And so there's nothing wrong with that. We just have to acknowledge that we don't know. And then we do have some ignorance about some things. And so my biggest advice that I was kind of taught when I first got into my leadership role is that, and the saying is, iron sharpens iron. And what that means is, like, for you and whatever you want to accomplish, make sure you're being very strategic on surrounding yourselves with people, or surrounding yourself with a group that want to accomplish similar or better things for yourself. And so when I think about, if I want to establish an environment that's truly diverse and truly inclusive, well, the people that I have to surround myself around, I have to make sure that they're a diverse group of people, and I have to make sure that they're an inclusive group of people, because if I do that by default, like, I'm allowing myself to grow and learn about diversity and inclusion in that process, because the people I surrounded myself with, they're going to help me do that. And so that's why I say the biggest piece of advice I can give there is just iron sharpens irons. Make sure that you surround yourself with folks that every day, just being around people or brushing shoulders with them, bumping into them, you can take some knowledge for them, you can take some experience for them that allows you to get closer to some of the goals that you want to accomplish. I think that's very major as you guys go into the professional work setting. Another question that we had is just around being your true, authentic self at work, and this one is a pretty interesting topic, because I think even still to today, if people are being honest, like, this is a topic that, like, people still have struggles with, and I'll talk more about it, but I want to also give some advice. And so my advice on this one is always truly be who you are and be yourself, because bottom line on top, during the interview process or during different interactions, when you apply for a certain role and apply for a certain job, you got hired because somebody saw something in you that they truly valued and that they truly appreciated, that they felt that their organization, their group really needed. And so when you try to change yourself too much and to compromise, you're doing yourself a disservice, because that's not what you were hired for. You were hired because people saw something truly, genuinely, and truly unique about yourself, and that's what they wanted. That's why they made you the offer for the job. That's why they had you join that company. But at the same time, I also want to caution and tell people, when it comes to being your true, unique, authentic self at work, also be smart. Like, we tell people to be real all the time, but at the same time, don't forget to be real smart at the same time. So be wise, be strategic, more feedback and more knowledge I want to give the group. I was always taught that you never really get you only get one time to make a first impression with a person. And typically that first impression that you make with somebody, that tends to carry you the remainder of your career. So when you're in certain settings, like, be smart, know your audience, know the environment that you're in, study your environment, study your audience. If you're in a very conservative audience and environment, understand that, know that sometimes, like, you may have to adapt to that. That's just being strategic, and that's just being smart on it. And Zan talked about this earlier in the presentation. Don't forget about your brand. So every day you're marketing and selling yourself, whether you want to acknowledge it or not. And a big part of that is understanding with yourself, what is the brand that I want to project? When people sit back and meet me, Thomas Blair, like, what do I want people to walk to think about when they think of me? And so when you're being your true, authentic self, understand, like, whatever you're putting out there for folks, that's your brand. That's how you're marketing yourself. That's how you're selling yourself. And whatever you want that to be, that's what you want to make sure that you're projecting out there for folks to really see. So use good sound judgment there when you're being your true, authentic self. And so I just want to give, like, those pieces of advice to the group. And as you guys leave from this webinar today, hopefully you guys can take that and incorporate that with your everyday and definitely within your careers.
All of our panelists for your insights and your advice. I think that we can all take and learn from some of the nuggets that you shared. So now I want to open it up to questions that you, our audience, have for the panelists. And we'll encourage you to add your questions to the chat, and we'll try to get to all of them in the time that we have remaining. So let's start with the first question that we had in the chat. And that first question was, what does Alight look for in potential candidates? And so for that question, I'm going to ask Gloria and Thomas to give their perspective. So Gloria, what would you say to that question?
I would say we look for people with great attitudes. Let's start there. In addition to having a great attitude, we also obviously need to fill the requirements of the position. So we're going to look for a lot of those elements. But again, back to my point earlier, don't feel as though you have to fit 100% of those things. If you come close, apply. If there are things that you have that aren't on your resume, sounds like you may need to do a little work on the resume. I can't tell you the number of times that I've conducted a screening interview and find out a bunch of great things from a candidate that are not on the candidate's resume. And I will ask the question, why didn't you put that on your resume? So please include those things. It's important. It's important that you really go through the job description and say, you know what? I've got some of these experiences. They're not on my resume. Let me do a little update here and make sure we've got some of those things there. So yes, we do need to fill the requirements of the job, but also we look for people that want to learn new things. You know, it's great to fill the current job, but you should have aspirations to learn new things and share your ability to pick up things quickly as well. So I think those are the kinds of things that we look for here at Alight, because we do believe that people matter and we're really looking for good, solid people.
For your questions in the chat, I see that a number of other questions are getting queued up. And Brennan, I know you asked a question in a similar vein, just in terms of applying for positions that you may have some, but maybe not all the qualifications for. So let us know in the chat if Gloria's response answered your question as well. So Thomas, what's your perspective?
My perspective on it. So, and I'll keep my answer a lot shorter this time. So I would say when I'm for a potential candidate, most of the time it's like I'll meet people at career fairs or it'll be in an interview setting. But one of the things that I'm really looking at is I'm looking for a person that truly has a passion for what they do. And I also like to see if their passion truly aligns with our values, because anybody can complete a resume, anybody can complete a cover letter, but you can't fake passion. And so when I'm listening to candidates, I'm interviewing candidates, I'm meeting them, the one thing I'm truly looking for is, does this person truly have a passion for what we're applying for? Do they have a passion for the job that they're looking into? And that's pretty key for me. And then the last two things that I'm really looking for and I'm observing is that, and this is back to making sure the environment is inclusive and is diverse. Like, when we talk about success, there's not a color that you can sit back and pick and say this color is more successful than another. You can't sit back and look at one geographical location and say this group of people are more successful than another group. Typically, when I look at what defines success, it comes down to a person's work ethic, and it comes to their ability to want to learn every single day. And so for me, that's what I'm looking for. I'm looking for a person that during the interview process, when I'm having a conversation with them, can I pick up on the fact that they have a strong work ethic, and the answers that they present to me, are those things really, really showing, and is that really coming out? And then when I sit back and I'm assessing a candidate and really listening to them talk, like, are they showing an ability to be disciplined? A person that has great work ethic and a person that has a little bit of skill and great discipline, typically they're going to turn out to be really successful in our environment. And so those are a couple of key things that I'm really looking for when I'm observing candidates.
So let's keep moving through some of the questions that we've received in the chat, and I want to jump to a question that Rikosha posted, and she says that she's a graduate of Clark Atlanta University in May 2020, and her major is mass media arts with a minor in religion. And her question is, does your company welcome any majors? She's also promoting her brand, because she has great customer service skills, and she's been employed with Walmart for almost 5 years now. Thank you for that, Rikosha. So first, I'm just going to say, I know I'm not a part of the panel, but I do want to share. I am a graduate of the University of Houston, and my major was psychology, but I lead a testing organization in an IT function. So to answer your question, I'm employed here with a major that does not reflect the work that I do. And so there's a lot that goes to the story in terms of the transition, but short answer to your question, I think, is yes. But let's hear what our panelists have to say. So why don't we go to Tola and ask Tola for her perspective? And then I actually would like to hear Jarvis's perspective on this one as well. So let's start with Tola.
Sure, that's a really good question. And the Thomas had talked about this and everyone else is we're looking for the passion. And as Gloria said, you may not, depending on what the job posting is, we do list out the different qualifications we're looking for, but you may not have all 10, but based on your work experiences, you may have 3 or 4. Just go ahead and apply because you never know. Maybe those 3 or 4 are the main qualifications that we're looking for, and the other ones that just add on that we would like to see. And as long as we're seeing the core qualifications and we're also getting that sense of passion from you and your willingness to learn, you have an opportunity to get that job. Again, don't limit yourself um, by your major. My major in undergrad is sociology. I am not doing anything with my sociology other than thinking about the society of my spare time again. And you see that example a lot of other people is just as you're working to your work experiences, you're learning different skill sets that might not align to your major, and you can really leverage those skill sets as you apply for jobs either within Alight or other companies that you're looking at. Okay.
Jarvis, what words of wisdom would you
And
share?
in the spirit of redundancy and a lot of the great answers that the panel has provided here, if you guys have not heard one common theme, it's flexibility and adaptability in whatever you're choosing to do. Business admin major with a concentration in marketing myself, with the high hopes of going into pharmaceutical sales at one point. But for me, having the opportunity to be presented with a job in a management position, I accepted that. It allowed me to navigate a different path and move along the way and just do a lot of things, managing people, projects, and everything else kind of under the sun before I ended where I am today. So I wouldn't want you to put as much stock in, okay, if it's not in my field, it's not in my major, I can't apply. Have the gumption and the ability to really be forward in your thinking and just, you have core skills, you finished this degree plan, but how flexible and adaptable are you? You're learning agility, the things that, as Thomas was alluding to, allow you to be seen as a very flexible and fluid person that can do a lot of things for the company. Don't limit yourself based on what's on that paper. That's great. You have the gumption to finish college, finish school, that's good. Now it's marketing that brand. What else can you do? How can you expand upon, who you are outside of, graduation and college? And now let's build that skill set. So you've done other things Gloria was alluding to. Build that resume accordingly. Show that you are able to do more than one thing. And so like a lot of us, sociology majors, psychology majors, we kind of morphed and fell into certain positions that have allowed us to grow professionally and really find our niche and do things that we truly love. So if I can tell you any and everything, be comfortable in being, adaptable and flexible, and don't be afraid to take chances with something that may feel a little bit uncomfortable.
All right, let's keep moving with some of the questions that we had in the chat. And the next one, this question is for Paulette. So, Paulette, during this time of COVID-19, how has the interview process changed?
Well, you have to rely on all of our senses to, to get to know folks, trust what you see on video to some extent. Try to ask those questions that you would ask in person and to some extent take risk. Be flexible. Folks have a lot going on in their lives and in order to manage both their work and their life. And so be flexible. And I think one thing I want the candidates to understand is that what you're going through is, if you have to sit in the basement or I'm sitting in my living room, everybody understands. Everybody's in the same boat. And, don't let that distract you, and don't let it make you feel like you don't have what it takes. Focus on what you bring to the table. And I definitely believe that the interviewer is looking for how comfortable you are in your own skin, in your own environment, and that you're going to bring that difference to the organization.
So I'm looking at time, and we've got a couple more questions to ask. So I want to just skip to a question from Justin, and this question specifically for Kayla. So Kayla, hi, my name is Justice, and I'm a senior at Johnson C. Smith University, majoring in business. I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about your transition into the workforce and how you see your major in your current position. So Kayla?
Okay. Hi. Good question. How to answer that? So when I was at ENT, I was a business student with a concentration in marketing, and a lot of things now that I wanted to do is very technology heavy based. So what I did was you took a lot of marketing internships where I was able to build websites. So I kind of taught myself how to code, and also went out to also use different coding resources. So that was kind of how I transitioned from college to the workforce. So I would say that Alight Solutions is 50% business, and I would say 50% technology based. One of the things that helped me transition was to, as a business student, I think one of our biggest strong sets is adaptability. So if we can adapt ourselves into any into any workforce, because basically we took a lot of classes such as accounting, communications, finance, and etc. So one of the things that I mainly see in my current position from college as a marketing student is communication. So I talk a lot with our different clients as a testing analyst and as the bridge between the technology side and business side. So one of the things is heavy communication based to show them like, hey, this is what can work for your software program that we're working on. That helps answer your question.
Thank you, Kayla. So everybody, hi. I know I'm a little late to the party here. My name is Prince Anna Price. Oh, actually, I'm sorry. Let me cut off my camera. Hi, everybody. Anna Price. I am the Workday Campus Recruitment and Training Lead with our payroll and cloud business here at Alight. I wanted to pop in because I know we are approaching the top of the hour, and I do want to be respectful of people. I see we do have maybe one or two more questions in the chat. So the panelists have agreed to stay on just longer to answer any of those remaining questions. But for those of you who do have to drop, I do want to say on behalf of Alight, thank you again for joining. We really appreciate it. For our seniors, you have either crossed or you are very close to crossing that finish line. So proud of you. For everybody on the line, just know that we commend you for hanging in there, and we encourage you to keep your head and your spirits lifted, keep pushing forward, and know that you shall pass. And most importantly, please be sure to reclaim your time at future homecomings down the line, because you are more than deserving. After this webinar has concluded, you will receive a link to our campus landing page, and that is where you can follow up with any other future available opportunities and roles with Alight. You'll also receive a recording of the webinar from today. The winner of today's gift card could be and will receive the gift card via email by the close of business today. So again, thank you. Continue to put the health and well-being of yourself and others first, and stay safe. Panelists, you may continue with answering any remaining questions as we stay on the line.
So we've got a couple more questions in the chat that we want to make sure that we address. So there was a question from Gloria on continued learning and how does Alight provide resources in learning new technology like machine learning and cloud computing for employees. And so why don't we have Thomas, who is our business leader in human capital management, share his perspective, and then I can also share some perspective from a technology team perspective as well.
Yeah.
So Thomas?
Yeah, for sure. So this is a great question, and I think one thing that I can truly appreciate about working for Alight Solutions is just the fact that how much they always value education and value learning. And so one of the things that new hires really appreciate when they're onboarded and join our company is the fact that we have something called Alight Academy. And I think it's awesome. So Alight Academy is open for all colleagues as soon as they start working in our Alight environment. And you can go in there and like type in different things that you want to learn in the search box, and then they'll pull up different modules or different trainings that you can take on whatever subject that you add in there. And I know for me, I started at the company about 7 years ago. One of the things that I really struggled with was Excel. And the more I kept moving through leadership, I had to learn how to get really good with Excel, pivot tables, macro, all those different things. And so on my free time, like I would sit back and plan breaks within and work to be able to sit back and go into Alight Academy and take some of these courses to really help myself out. And so I think that's pretty amazing. And I'll talk about this. Some people might not know this that's on the call, but one big initiative that we did for our specific line of business last year is as part of one of the bonus programs that we had for our group. Instead of giving monetary things for bonus, we understood that people like to be rewarded differently. And so for some of our managers that achieved a bonus, they had an option to join something called Coursera. And with Coursera, they got a 1-year membership to that site. And so on that site, they have different schools from Duke, Yale, Harvard. They put a lot of their information on that platform. And so you can take classes and get actual certifications directly from those different schools. And so it was another thing that we put out there that's based around learning that a lot of our managers gravitated toward, that really wanted to push the envelope of their knowledge and different skill sets. And so we do a lot of things that are pretty amazing at Alight. And, you know, it's just kudos to our ongoing leadership team to just put those things out there for our folks.
Cool about Coursera. I knew that existed, but didn't realize how broad a reach we had with using those that as a resource. But I also wanted to share that you know, when Angela introduced us as an organization, you know, we are a cloud payroll and benefits business. So cloud, much of what we do, much of the technology that we deployed in the technology space, I know I spoke about my team testing payroll systems, those are all cloud-based systems. And so in order for us to support technology, to support AI, so if you are, you know, you log onto a portal or you log onto our benefits portal, you see chats, and our chat is named Eloise. So, you know, all of those things are kind of embedded in the core business that we deliver for our clients. And so, of course, you know, there's opportunities to learn more about those technologies because it's required for us to support our business. So we had one last question, and I want to make sure that we don't lose sight of this one. So the last question was, and I'm going to ask Angela to actually answer this question. But the last question is there available entry-level roles at this time? So Angela, can you respond to Derek on that question?
You're on mute, Angela.
Can you hear me now? Hello? Can you hear me? Okay, perfect. Thank you. We have wrapped up our campus and entry-level recruiting at this time for the season, but we do ask that you become part of our talent community and stay up to date on things that are happening at Alight. We will be back on campus in the fall, and we will be posting our positions and sending out information through the talent community tools. So please make sure that you check us out at careers.alight.com. Thank you. And thank you everyone today for joining. This has been wonderful, and I hope you got a lot from it.
Thank you for that. Are there any other questions in the chat? I want to make sure that we have answered all of your questions before we move on. Oh, looks like we've got a couple of other questions. Do we still have time, panelists, to answer one or two more questions?
I can stay on, Zan, as long as they need.
Okay. So a question from Ebony. She's a graduate of Texas Southern University, Thomas. And her question to the panel is, I'm sorry, Thomas Jarvis, not Thomas. But her question to the panel is, what made you choose Alight? And what is your favorite part about working at the company? So Jarvis, answer the question. Would you mind answering the question for your fellow alum?
Not at all. Mighty, mighty Tigers. Of course I'll represent. I think for me, as I was planning to leave MD Anderson at the time, I had just kind of outgrown the positions available in the company. And Alight, which we were under a different name at the time, Hewitt Associates, was really, really growing in the Houston area from a customer care perspective. And for me, I really felt like at the time it was a great career opportunity. If I was going to do it, now was the time to do it. I was 15 years into my working career, and I didn't want to be, too late in the game trying to change roles and positions and things of that nature. So I had a good series of interviews with Alight. And during that process, they just made me feel comfortable. It made me feel like a place I kind of wanted to be at and really see if I can put down some foundational roots and really, grow with the company. And so I think for me, it's the ability to go to work every day and just enjoy what I'm doing. You're always going to have tasks, going to have things that you have to complete. That's why it's called work. But I don't mind getting up every day and going to work with my peers and a lot my friends. At Alight, they make it pleasurable for us to do our job. And like you say, we get to be genuine and be our real selves at work. And I think that's important for me.
Yes.
And Zan, you're honorary. You're a cougar from down the street, so we still accept you though.
Oh yeah, for sure. I spent my first year of my time on the yard at Texas, I have to admit. All right. So are there any other questions? Again, want to make sure that we have a chance to address all the questions.
I think we've gotten to all the questions in the queue at this point.
To close us out.
Already, but even for you all who hung on in there and helped ask any remaining questions, we thank you for joining us. Again, stay safe. And if it was unclear before, I know I said it in the chat, but the winner of the card will receive a text and the gift card will be delivered by email following this webinar. And everybody who joined today will receive a recording. Thank you and have an awesome day. Thank you, panelists.